Welcome to the CPG Guys podcast. Your hosts, Shri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage consumers in an increasingly digitally driven world. And now, here are the CPG Guys. To another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. I'm your co-host, PVSB, and when I'm not co-hosting this podcast, I serve as head of industry and client engagement at Flywheel, the e-commerce accelerator division of Omnicom. My co-host is, of course, the Chief Revenue Officer of Think Blue Consulting. He is the patriarch of the Raj family media empire, and he is formerly the Chief Customer Officer at General Mills. He's my best friend, Shri. While Shri's not here with me in the intro, he's actually the one conducting the interview in this episode. More about that later. Please follow us on your favorite podcast platform, Apple, Spotify. If you're on those, make sure to leave us a rating. It's what helps make our podcast more discoverable by people like you looking to be educated and entertained about the industry we work in. And make sure to listen to our sister podcast, the FMCG Guys and CPG Scoop. This episode was recorded by Shri in Atlanta, Georgia on the 11th of April, and it was done at the Commerce Media Brand Summit where Shri appeared. We hope you enjoy it. It's with Bayer's Chelsey Alexander. And now, on to the episode.
Hey, Chelsey, welcome to the CPG Guys. It's exciting to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, Chelsey, before we start, can you give me a quick overview of Bayer and what your specific role is over there?
Sure. So my official title is Vice President of Emerging Digital Platforms. And what that means is if you think about commerce over the last 5 years, it's significantly changed, obviously, but it's creating a bit of this almost this fragmented commerce experience from a consumer standpoint that's looming. We used to talk about it as headless commerce a few years ago.
I do remember that.
Yeah, and we would always say, like, good luck with that. And Now we're here, right? We would say, hey, there's going to be a time in place where a consumer goes into any app in their phone and they're going to expect to be able to see, if they see something, they should be able to buy it within 5 to 6 clicks. We used to say, that's never going to happen. Well, it's here. And so my job is to make sure that we are having a unified branded experience within this sort of fragmented commerce experience across these different digital platforms.
Now, thank you so much, Chelsey, for, of course, our listeners. Chelsey's LinkedIn profile, Bayer's LinkedIn profile, Bayer Online will be available in the digital liner notes of the podcast for most of you that follow us while on the go. And now let's jump into the question, Chelsey. You ready for this?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
First thing I'd love to know is about you, the human being, the person. Take us through your career growth from starting in the drug channel at P&G to all the way leading emerging channels. You have a very unique role in the CPG industry. I'm not so sure there's a bunch of VPs of emerging channels. Right. So Bayer and you are obviously doing something right because I admire that a lot.
Yeah. So whenever I talk about myself, I like to start with my heart. And I had a really unique growing up experience where I was raised by a single mother who was a nurse. And, have you ever been around people where they're just operating in their purpose and you just know it? And so I got to see that from a very early on age, and it's Women's Month, so you're going to hear me shout out women quite a bit.
Hey, shout out for International Women's Day. That was yesterday, and Women's Month here on the CPG Guys, Chelsey.
Absolutely.
Every March is Women's Month. Only women can come on the show.
Yeah, oh, fantastic. So that was a really unique experience that I had growing up, and I think it was sort of a bit of my guiding light. I remember my mom going into her home healthcare visits, and I would see patients' faces light up when she would show up. And so I think that was a bit of a guiding principle for me that actually started to bleed over into how I thought about my career. So when I started, obviously, I was raised by a nurse, so we're operating in a little bit of different fields. But so when I got started in business, I honestly just took it upon myself. I kind of felt like a bit of a fish out of water. And so I just started looking at people who I admired and said, hey, would I want to be like doing what they're doing in the future? And sort of got curious and just asked them about their early experiences since I was just starting.
But Chelsey, I got to imagine having a mom as a nurse means empathy has been there from day one.
Absolutely. And curiosity. And so I started asking questions. And so here's what I found. I found that, a lot of the top leaders that I knew and respected, they spent their earlier parts of their career learning how to manage a business and a P&L, learning how to sell, getting the autonomy to sort of have some freedom to try different things and make some mistakes. And then a lot of them had touched the Walmart business. So when, I remember they gave me this laundry list of cities that I could potentially go to. And I saw Bentonville and I was like, okay, I know that one. Everybody told me they touched that business. So that's how I ended up in sort of my first sort of sales role within P&G.
I spent most of my life in a commercial sales career.
Yeah.
And it was drilled in my head right in the beginning. You got to do a tour of duty in Walmart. Mm-hmm. I actually turned down that role for Frito. And instead, they asked me to lead e-com, which at that point I thought was the dumbest decision on planet Earth, but it changed my life. Eventually, that's what I got grounded in, and that's why we have the CPG guys with my best friend Peter. But yes, Walmart.
Yes. So it's interesting because I think we had similar experiences. So I like to think of my career as sort of like the tale of two cities. So I had sort of the fundamental building. I had a 12-year career with P&G, and they're known for building out the fundamentals from a brand standpoint as well as from a business standpoint. So I feel like that laid a fantastic foundation. And about 10, 11 years into my career, similar to you, I started looking at the landscape and I said, wait a second, I feel like in order to be that leader that, I was asking questions to when I first started, I think that the things that I need to know and understand are going to be different in the next 4 to 5 years. So I decided to make a pivot. I wanted to learn more about agility and entrepreneurship and building and e-com. And so I jumped and I decided to go to a startup. So I went to an e-commerce startup for a few years.
Which one was it?
It was called PharmaPacks, and then later transitioned
to Packable. Of course, PharmaPacks.
Yeah.
I have a whole bunch of buddies there that started the company.
Yes. So a fantastic organization. I joined that organization.
Mr. Andrew himself.
Yeah, exactly. A true visionary, honestly. Part of the reason why I was so excited to join was Andrew and his vision. But so I can give background on this, but essentially joined PharmaPacks. We announced that we were going to go public about a month or two after I joined. We filed and announced bankruptcy about maybe 2 years after I joined, a little less than 2 years. And so obviously very different than the expectations, but a lot of really good and robust learning in that entire experience. And so that's actually how I ended up at Bayer. So Bayer was one of my clients. And essentially what Bayer said is, hey, you were doing a lot for us in this space from a partnership standpoint.
They said, Chelsey, it's about time.
Yeah,
head over.
Exactly.
That's what happened.
So I sort of feel like my role in Bayer is sort of merging those two experiences, which is exactly what I wanted on this sort of journey that I'm on.
Listen, there's a dearth of talented brick and mortar veterans who have morphed into e-com evangelists and experts, especially if you have a third-party service background of a couple of years. It is nothing short of platinum. I won't even say gold.
All right.
So
thanks.
Congratulations on the career journey you've had. Now, let me ask you that very question, right? E-commerce, last few years, brick and mortar first, let's say decade or so. How is that brick and mortar experience serving you well for what you do today, emerging channels, or even in the e-commerce world overall? Because as I mentioned, there's very few like you.
Yeah. So I think one of the fundamental, learnings that I've had over the years is that the building any brand comes down to physical availability and mental availability. And so I think from a physical availability standpoint, I'm super grateful to have had a sort of traditional retail experience to start. Because ultimately, I think...
Especially Walmart.
Exactly. And so I think, especially because I think execution is so important, and it's now more important than ever, I would argue. And so I think the traditional retail experience gave me sort of that background of being able to put yourself in the shoes of the retailer or even the customer in a retail environment. I think from a mental availability standpoint, it's been really interesting over the last 5 to 6 years because I think that's one of the spaces that has changed the most. The consumer experience is becoming more and more fragmented. I read a report the other day that consumers now officially spend more time on their digital devices than they're spending on any other surface. So you can imagine this sort of fragmented experience where I'm watching TV and I see maybe a commercial. I'm trying to avoid it, but then I get on my phone and now I'm having a different sort of media experience. And so I think that one of the...
We agree with you that linear TV is almost a complete waste with the exception of a few live programming, maybe the Super Bowl, maybe a handful of the playoff games, NBA, the Oscars, Grammys, but short of that,
Absolutely.
Everyone's
You're
scrolling.
exactly
People
right.
are avoiding ads.
You're exactly right. And I think it started with people sort of trying to move in mass to subscriptions to avoid commercials. And so I think one of the interesting things about that from a branded standpoint is because of the fragmentation, one of the things that is going to still be important with the reduction of linear TV is how are we going to drive awareness? That's how brands last long term, and it's becoming increasingly more difficult to sort of create these audiences to get new eyeballs on your products. And so I think where I'm thankful for the sort of experiences that I've had, and specifically focusing in on digital media over the last several years is. I think that is going to be the way to move the consumer fully through the funnel and that sort of consumer journey and driving mental availability. I think the other thing I'm grateful for in the sort of dual experiences that I've had is I'm grateful that I had a more traditional sort of sales, brick and mortar experience and e-commerce experience because I'm able to sort of translate. So we were just talking about before we got started, the number of folks and decision makers in the branded marketing sales space who may not have had experiences along their career directly managing digital or e-commerce businesses. And so I think one of the reasons that I'm grateful for the dual experience is sometimes you need to translate so you can bring people along. So I told this example of like, I was in a meeting and I was talking about the buy box and I was like, buy box. And someone said,
I just heard it.
Yeah, it's
on the panel.
Exactly. And someone said, wait a second, what is the buy box and why is it so important? And so I said, oh, okay, this is all about availability online. It's like having a tag on the shelf and the product's in the back, it's not where the consumer would see it. So being able to translate to then build the capability to bring people along is also, I think, an added benefit of having those dual experiences.
No doubt about that, Chelsey. I believe in that myself. That's what my career eventually morphed into.
Right.
So speaking of your role now, obviously in the last few years, I'd say now more than ever, social marketplaces, the TikTok shop, the all too famous TikTok shop, as well as marketplaces in general.
Yeah.
Very few people know that Amazon's 3P business is larger than its 1P business.
Yeah, and growing faster.
Yeah. Our prediction on the CPG guys, 5 years from now,
Yeah.
Amazon doesn't need to be a 1P. It can
Yeah.
be a fully 3P business, selling ads.
Completely agree.
Backed on AWS. Why would you do a 1P business and lose money?
Yeah.
All that said, your role specifically looks at this. You're very close to this growing phenomenon. We believe deeply in the TikTok shop.
Yeah.
Love to hear your thoughts on social and marketplace, social shops and marketplaces.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with marketplaces. I mean, this is a place, these are both spaces where I have a lot of passion, obviously. I think I'll start with marketplaces. You're exactly right. So many people don't know how large a 3P marketplace is. I tend to agree. I think it's just going to get bigger, right? Because you get to pass over the cost of the most expensive part of your business, which is shipping the stuff to people, to the brand. And then I think the other interesting thing about marketplaces...
The other thing with marketplaces I realized when you're in a 1P business is you get into this competing with regular brick and mortar on discounting.
Yes.
And doing all kinds of promo activity.
Yeah.
When you turn it over to 3P, you don't have that responsibility anymore.
Absolutely. You're exactly right. I think the interesting thing, I'll tell a story from my early days on Walmart. I had a buyer who, I'd obviously be coming in obviously with new products or trying to sell expanded distribution. He'd say, look, my shelf ain't getting any longer. And I think what's really cool about marketplaces is the shelf is actually getting longer. I think it provides a really cool and unique opportunity to provide expanded assortment from a consumer lens.
Doug McMillan, the CEO of Walmart, right, just announced they're shooting for 1 million SKUs on the marketplace.
Wow.
1 million.
Yeah.
He didn't even talk about how many SKUs 1P.
Right.
Marketplaces, 1 million.
Exactly. So the shelf is literally kind of expanding from a consumer standpoint. So I think that's a really interesting opportunity. I also think it provides an interesting opportunity for brands, if they're willing to make that choice, to take control of your brands. It's a bit of a hybrid between sort of brick and mortar and D2C. I would argue a more economical one. So I think that's the interesting thing about marketplaces. I think from a social commerce standpoint, it's been really, you mentioned TikTok, it's been a really interesting thing to watch over the last 3 to 4 years, the significant growth and expansion in that space. I think social commerce plays a really unique opportunity in engaging consumers in the discovery of new again. I think that there's a sea of messages, and I think some of the data that I've seen is that consumers are maybe getting a bit worn out with the number of conflicting messages. But I think social commerce provides this really unique opportunity where there's sort of this unique level of engagement, and then you're very quickly pulling people into the consideration for commerce, which I think is really interesting. And so if you think about TikTok as an example, TikTok went from, like in 2020, 2021, people like lip syncing battles and dance off competitions to now 180 million users who are now open to
The
purchasing.
numbers are absolutely staggering.
It's insane.
And most people in the US, I don't think, understand the importance of TikTok. It's like Alibaba, right? Alibaba never came into this country. Many times the size of Amazon, world's second largest retailer.
Right.
After Amazon, I mean, did you know that Walmart is third now?
Wow.
Amazon is overtaken as one,
Wow.
Alibaba is second, and then Walmart's third. But that said, most people don't understand the phenomenon of why TikTok is such a big deal.
Yeah, it's they created a platform, and I think we're going to see more of this. I'll talk a little bit about that later, but they've created this unique level of engagement, almost this like obsessive level of engagement, which then flows the ad dollars, right? Because they're eyeballs that we're trying to catch as a brand to drive awareness. And then quickly you realize your ability to drive commerce. I think I read the other day that 60% of the TikTok users are open to or have discovered a new brand or product via the platform. I mean, that's magical from a brand standpoint.
I'm thinking Gen Z, right?
Right.
Gen Z spends hours on TikTok,
Yeah.
as well as Reels, Instagram Reels, all kinds of short form content. YouTube is new now.
Absolutely.
With Reels.
Yeah.
If you're Gen Z, odds are innovation.
Yeah.
That's the only way you're going to discover it. True or false?
Say that one more time.
Brand innovation, someone puts out new innovation.
Yeah.
One of the only ways you're going to reach Gen Z is one of these social marketplaces.
I think it would definitely be a primary source for sure. It would definitely be the number one place I would go, because I think if you think about that generation, there's a couple of things. Number one, they're engaged, to your point, on the platform. So I think you're right. It's like an hour and a half that people spend in general a day on TikTok. But then I also think that generation also has a different expectation of what makes your content differentiated versus your key competition. I think that generation has an expectation of authenticity, frictionlessness, right? Like make it feel like you're not really pitching me, and then also stand for something. And so I think it's a really unique platform to be able to communicate all three of those things in one place.
Speaking of content that you referred to,
Yeah.
we strongly believe that the world is moving from generic one-to-many content, which is what brands have built their industrial strength on and scale, to one-to-one and personalization.
Yeah.
If you're a large-scale brand, how do you do this today? How do you grasp this concept of one-to-one content? How do you create it? How do you scale it? And how do you get it done?
Yeah, I think.
Are you starting to think about this yourself?
For sure. I think that the content expectations are absolutely changing, to your point. I mean, you used to shoot like, a 90-second commercial, you splice it into some 15s and 30s, you do a couple of action shots, make those, different package images. I think the content expectation is significantly different. Just use TikTok as an example. One of the benefits and one of the perceived benefits from a user standpoint is I never have to see the same thing again, which by and large then means that your content deliverables need to be very different. We are definitely thinking about that. Here's what I'd say about content. Number one, the data that we're seeing is that content is still king, and having your content differentiated.
It's Women's Month. Here we're going to say content is queen.
Queen, there you go. All right, content is queen. So content is still queen. What I mean by that is if you take a look at the different levers, content, targeting, personalization, content is the one that has stayed consistently driving 50% or more of the incremental attribution of incremental sales. So what that says to me is whether it's 2017 or now, content is still massively important in showcasing that you're differentiated versus your key competition. Now, there are different things out. Oh, go ahead.
When you look at the marketplace in general,
Sure.
I'm not asking Bayer, but just when you look at the marketplace in general, have large brands understood, and do you, as a consumer, feel satisfied with the content you receive?
I think that the evolution requirements have elevated significantly in a short period of time. So if I take that into consideration for context, then I think, yes, I think that we are definitely trying to elevate or raise the tides. I think that going forward, I think there are going to have to be different ways that we're thinking about how do you scale that and how do you personalize that in a way that's meaningful for consumers. I think activating across these different emerging digital platforms is definitely going to be a way to do that. So if you think about TikToks as an example, does it mean that I need to have 400 different ways, different still shots of a brand? No. But do I need to have a different level or a different makeup of content creators who are talking about my brand? Yeah. Right. And so I think figuring out.
Hey, that's one way to get one-to-one content.
Exactly.
Outsource UGC
Absolutely.
content creators.
Absolutely. So, and over 75% of TikTok Shop's volume comes from partnerships with TikTok or with the creators. So I think that's definitely another way. I think there's a lot of conversation about AI out there. Look, my perspective on that is I think AI has a really big opportunity to help us with a lot of the sort of back end things that have or that are needed from a digital commerce landscape standpoint. Product data entry, so a lot of the PIM functionality, search engine optimization, bullet writing, title writing, a lot of the non-sexy stuff. But that's the
Look
stuff
at Chelsey on top of her AI and all the different use cases.
it's not the sexiest stuff, but it's needed. You know this.
Couldn't agree more, right? We shouldn't let AI become a buzzword in the industry, but we need to get into the unsexy, everyday brass tacks work that can benefit significantly from AI.
Absolutely. So I think that does a couple of things. Number one, I think there's so much work that goes behind executing something digitally. And frankly, there's so much information that I think that the people within our organizations are almost over inundated with the level of activity that needs to happen to execute something. So I think AI presents a really cool opportunity to sort of free up capacity of the humans within our organization to do what we want them to be doing, which is storytelling, making sure that our content is differentiated. Here's what I'll say from a content standpoint, because I know there's a lot of kind of back and forth on, hey, just use AI. I'd say it's not quite there yet.
Well, most people who say that don't really understand AI, right? They think of ML and AI as the same thing.
Right. And so I think, look, I've heard a lot of really cool, and I've seen a lot of cool, interesting case studies where people use AI as like a first cut for content. I think it's probably there. But in terms of content, again, if content is still queen, it still needs to be differentiated versus your key competition. And I still think that is something that we want the people within our organizations to be leading. And so I'd say it's not quite there yet to just like set it and forget it in that way. I'd say AI is frankly sometimes better at the sort of data entry than humans because you eliminate human error. But from a content standpoint, I don't think it's there, but I do think it is going to get significantly better over the next 2 years.
You bet, Chelsey, and we'll be looking forward to that. A quick reminder to our audience that I'm speaking with Chelsey Alexander, Vice President of Emerging Digital Channels at Bayer. So let's jump into fun area now.
Okay.
The customer consumer journey or the shopper journey, right? A lot has been talked over the last few years. I hope brands have renewed a new path to purchase and a new consumer journey.
Yeah.
But as you look through today's consumer journey, which parts of those do you believe brands need to be best in class? Upper funnel, mid funnel, consideration, lower funnel, all over the place, full funnel? I'm just curious.
I think that the sort of explosion of commerce media, digital media, in-store media, retail media has made us really good, and I feel like we're getting really sharp mid to lower funnel, right? Because we're right-sizing measurement, making measurement more effective, and those are all very like mid to kind of lower funnel functionalities. I think the opportunity area is one of my concerns, and this is just a general concern as I look at the landscape, is about awareness. I mean, brands are built over bringing people to the top of the funnel, driving awareness over time, again and again, year after year. And one of the things that I'm seeing is the awareness driving functionality has become so fragmented, like we were talking about earlier, and it's becoming increasingly hard to get large audiences to look at your stuff or consider your new things. And so I think one of the opportunity areas is how to drive awareness. One of the cool things I'm starting to see is, getting more effective at using different vehicles to drive awareness, like social commerce, marketplaces, but also in store. I think retailers are getting really sharp and focused and smart. We used to say distribution is a gift that keeps on giving, right? Well, why? Well, because what better than, I think I read Walmart has 255 million consumers that walk their store every single week. That's a lot of eyeballs. So what better to get people to recognize your new brand
I think you
product.
just gave Doug Josem, Seth Diller, and Ryan Mayward an idea on
Yeah.
monetizing in-store retail media. And
I mean,
the answer wasn't screens. The answer was you've already got end caps out
yeah.
there. You've already got I-95, the action aisle right as you walk in past
Right.
the greeter.
Yeah.
You can monetize all of that as
Yeah.
retail media. It doesn't have to be just end caps and displays. Because,
Yeah.
when it's end caps and displays, the buyers are selling you single use cases. When it's retail media,
Yeah.
it's awareness, whole different ballgame. You gave away the plot.
Hey, I mean, look, as a passion person in this space, as I just kind of try to call it like I see it as I look at the landscape. But I think it's really interesting and getting creative in how to drive awareness. But that I feel like is going to be priority number one, to figure out how to do that ongoing. I think the other challenge will be in that space is measurement's already a challenge, right? And we're getting better at
And
it.
we heard enough about it in 1 hour at the summit you and I are both
Exactly.
on, which is the Commerce Media Brand Summit.
Yes.
Both panels that I watched talked about measurement is the single biggest challenge.
Yeah, and the challenge and why I think we really need to be talking about and focusing on awareness going forward is measuring awareness was already difficult enough, right? The level of transparency, expectations, and what's behind the information is going to rise. And I think, even with awareness driving in general, you have to wait like how many months for MMMs to come back and things like that. So if you think about it now in this digital media landscape, it's going to become even more important for us to have faith and confidence in its ability to drive that top of funnel.
And you're always welcome back on the show. That's a whole separate podcast,
Yeah.
measurement, because the industry is in the middle of a warp knot is the best I can think about for measurement.
You're exactly right.
But now let's talk about people and culture.
Sure.
No leader can be successful without a great team.
Absolutely.
And teams uplift their leaders, and it's the responsibility of a leader to give back and uplift the team in return.
Sure.
So tell us about the teams you've had,
Yeah.
and how you actually orchestrate this aura of uplifting your team or uplifting you
Yeah.
through leadership principles. What matters to you the most?
Sure. So I've had a varying number and size of teams and skill sets and tenures, and that's given me a really good, unique opportunity to sort of learn across, various ways of leading and different ways that you can lead different groups. I think a few of the sort of leadership principles that have come from learnings that have been, from afar or trial by fire. I think number one is you need to manage people in the ways that are most effective for them, in ways that they want to be managed, and not ways that maybe are most effective for you or in the ways that you've been managed. I think a very quick story in that space. I think the second thing also is knowing your people and their why for being there is super important. And a quick story on how I learned those two things is when I first became a people manager, I had a small team of about 4 or 5. And, I was very excited. I think this was the company sort of, it felt like the company was saying to me, hey, we have aspirations for you to do something maybe bigger, but this is your opportunity to now show your ability to be a leader. And I had the situation where I think that I was maybe potentially, frustrating a couple of folks on my team and I wasn't quite understanding. And I think one of the key things I found out is that I had people with these disparate whys and these disparate desires of how they wanted to be managed. I had one person who said, hey, I love my family time. So really, honestly, for me, I'd love to maximize the amount of time I can spend with my family as possible. And another person who said, hey, I want to be you. So I want to get to where you are in the same timeline and those types of things. And so those are very different whys and very different expectations. And what I found is I was sort of just managing them in the ways that I had been managed or the ways that made sense to me instead of in the ways that made sense for them. And what that really did is sort of unlock this sort of new way of seeing leadership, which is truly knowing your people and then adjusting your style for what's most beneficial for them. I think the other thing I've learned from a leadership standpoint is sometimes just as humans, it's hard to see yourself because our whole experience is just, it's filtered through, what we believe and how we see ourselves. And so I think having the humility to be able to understand yourself through someone else's lens. So I think, it's one thing to say.
So well said.
Yeah, it's one thing to say.
Walk a mile in someone else's shoes and the world changes.
Exactly. Because it's one thing, and sometimes it's hard, right? So we're all human. Because it's like, look, if I say like, hey, I really care about people and what matters to them, and someone says, hey, I don't really feel like you're focused on what matters to me. It's like, oh, that's kind of tough.
It's the truth, though.
It's the truth.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I think one of the honestly, the more beautiful experiences I've had as a people leader is the ability to see myself through other people's eyes and then use that to grow as not only a leader, but honestly as a human. Um, and so I think that's been another sort of principle that I've taken away.
Speaking of those very two principles, what about mentorship? What's
Yeah.
the role of mentorship? Have you gotten mentorship over the years? What's the value? And then how do you pass that back on, especially for other women in the industry?
Yeah. It's super important. So I'm a Gemini for those that are into zodiac signs.
Gemini child.
I'm a Gemini child.
Now we're going to
so
call you Chelsey the Gemini child.
There you go. And so I love getting like exposure and stimulation from different types of people in different ways and in different formats. And so I've had a number of very, very impactful mentors who have just sort of helped me grow in very specific ways. I like to shout out people specifically. And it is Women's Month. So again, you're going to hear me shout out some really, honestly, just sharp, brilliant women who have honestly invested in me even beyond what I expected. So, I've had mentors who have inspired the way that I think. So one of the people that has inspired me both from, my engagements directly, but then also from just seeing them from afar, Monica Turner. I mean, for me, one of the most inspirational things about my engagements with her.
You mean Miss P&G herself?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Is just her ability to inspire us to think about the possibilities beyond what we can see today.
She is the boss.
Yes.
I had the fortune of serving with her on the board of Next Up.
Yes.
Back in 2023.
There you go. Yeah. I was involved in Next Up as well. And so I think just this ability to not only say, hey, what's possible, but then let's have a discussion about building the plan for what could potentially be possible. Maisha Webster, also a P&G, someone I worked with at P&G. She really helped me think about language and how you can use your language to bring more people along. And so I remember many times where I would sit down with her and say, hey, I'm about to have this discussion or I'm about to present this thing, and her sort of whiteboarding with me on like, okay, but what are the ways in which you can articulate that are going to bring more people along with you and what you're trying to accomplish?
What a great formula, right? If you bring people along with you,
Absolutely.
It's a win for everybody.
Yeah.
Should Maisha be on the show?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Maisha,
she gets my vote. So
we're going to have you on the show, and Chelsey's going to help us get you on the show.
Okay.
All right. So mentors, keep going.
Gosh, I could go on for days. Jen Davis was another one who, and the thing that I learned about that is, or the thing that I learned from her is, there's one thing to have the vision and the strategy on paper. It's a whole nother thing to take it all the way through to execution. So that's another one where I remember just whiteboarding of like, have you thought about this? And what about if this happens? And how many scenarios have you planned out? And so that was a really cool experience. I think Chris Hainbeck, who you've had on the podcast.
Oh yes, yeah, good friend.
He's been a mentor for years.
You'll miss him now.
Yeah, and one of the things I love about Chris is he sort of helped me sort of think about being bolder as a leader. Say what you mean and say what you think and ask for what you want. And so that's something I've been really appreciative of. So, I mean, again, I could go on for days, but I think one of the things I attribute to where I am today is the really impactful mentors that I've had. I will say one thing. One of the things I feel like I learned in sort of the second half of my career is not only the importance of mentorship, but also the importance of sponsorship. And that was
very different, right? Mentorship,
exactly.
Sponsorship.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Like mentors is, that sort of like, okay, these are the skill sets I want to develop, or even sometimes just an ear, like, hey, I'm struggling with this thing. What would you do if you were me? I think sponsorship was a different muscle I had to learn how to flex, which is it's just a different relationship. It's more of, hey, these are my aspirations. Am I thinking about this correctly given where you are? But then it's also a person who is willing to use their social capital or their power in rooms that you won't be in, push your career further along. So that's something that I feel like I learned. And that's a different muscle to flex.
So Chelsey, I got to ask you, are you doing that for other, I'm going to be very pointed with my question.
Yeah.
Are you doing that for other women? Because you need to. The industry needs to.
Absolutely. I feel like because I attribute so much of where I am today because of those mentors who took the time to pour into me, I have to pay it forward. And so it's definitely something that is massively important to me. And honestly, not only in CPG, but also my community. So I actually serve on the board.
That's wonderful.
I serve on the board for an organization out of Cincinnati. They're called Mortar, MORTAR. And they are a nonprofit that focuses on investing in new business owners with a focus
Love
on
that
women
name.
business owners. Yeah, so
That's awesome.
with women, focus on women business owners and entrepreneurs of diverse backgrounds.
And they're welcome to come on the show, tell their story to the
Okay.
entire industry.
All right.
And anytime do connect us, we'd be happy to have them and tell the mission, especially if they're focused on women entrepreneurs, because Peter and I believe deeply we have a long way to go in the journey.
Absolutely.
Lastly,
Yes.
trends.
Trends.
AI, buzzword,
Yes.
real. And AI is just a word, right?
Yeah,
But what
right.
trends are you following?
Yeah. One trend that has been super interesting for me to follow, and I feel like it's going to evolve even further over the next 2 years, is this trend that I'm sort of coining is like engagement to commerce. So, what has been interesting about using TikTok as an example is that they were able to form this unique level of engagement with a large group of people, a large audience. Then came the ad dollars. And so I think, number of brands saw the opportunity and started investing heavily from an ad standpoint. And then came commerce. And I feel like that is sort of a trend that I'm keeping my eye on of sort of, it's almost like we're trying to move people through the funnel very quickly because we're recognizing that we don't have a lot of time with the person, right? So you move them to commerce as quickly as possible. And I think you're going to start to see more of that once a platform recognizes that they have a high level of engagement. How quickly can I get them to commerce? Could I sell things to them? I think gaming is one to watch. It's been a really interesting thing. I've been reading about it, and seeing these gaming streamers like Kai Cenat. I think I'm saying his name correctly, but the level of engagement they have for the amount of time that they have. I mean, these streamers are getting people to watch them for hours, days.
If advertising went to those, the ROI would be insane.
Incredible.
But then brand marketers are still thinking about in-store display.
Yeah. Yes.
So how do we get them there?
Yeah. I mean, I think they're starting to get there, right? And I think that you're starting to see that with investments on TikTok. You're starting to see that with investments on Facebook marketplaces and YouTube, shoppable videos. And so I think we're starting to get there. But I think it's going to your point, I think it's going to be a need that evolves even further. I think gaming's one to watch. I think YouTube is doubling down on shoppable videos. So I think you're going to start seeing more where there's high level of engagement. You're going to start to see tests around commerce.
I loved you were the first person on the show in forever. When we asked this closing question about trends, you did not refer to artificial intelligence. My hat's off to you. I mean, there's a couple of things that are exciting you're speaking about that everyone should be aware. And the answer is definitely not AI. AI is already here today, AI is here to already stay.
Yeah.
Chelsey, I want to thank you for making time during a busy summit, the Commerce Media Brand Summit, to be with us and join us on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I want to say my hat's off to you all for what you all are doing in the industry. It's just really cool the ways in which you're bringing this trended information to build capability and honestly make sure we keep evolving. So
that's the goal and mission of the CPG Guys, to provide education to all of you listening in. Get in touch with us. Easy. All you have to do is simply go to a web browser and type www.cpgguys.com as a URL. And if you or anyone you know would like to shape the discussion on the CPG Guys, just drop us an email at contact@cpgguys.com. Again, that email is contact@cpgguys.com. To our followers, we can't say thank you enough times. You shaped the show for doing what Chelsey just did. Actually recording a podcast at one of these conferences, getting in touch with us, clicks, likes, comments, DMs, shaping us. We absolutely, from the bottom of our heart, Peter and I thank you. If you have a second, Apple Podcast, do leave us a rating. Why we ask you for that is the rating tells us how we're doing. The review will actually tell us whether we are having the right conversations. That's a wrap. See you soon on another episode of the CPG Guys.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.